Welcome to And Double D. We are back in our new format of our podcast series again. This where we now call calling in and calling out leadership or leadership. And we are really excited today, Debbie, aren't we?
Yes, you are, Dave.
Yes, I am. Yeah. I have got one of the best guests ever with us today, coming all the way from Japan. I think that's going to throw people off unless they're watching, right?
Well, are you in Japan? I didn't realize that. That's exciting.
Yeah. Debbie, we have Greig Laidlaw, Scotland captain and rugby union giant with us. I think that's a good way of putting it, Greg, isn't it?
Yeah, two kinds. Obviously, not a giant in the sense of stature, but yeah, very much based over here in Japan. Currently, Debbie, I'm now head coach actually of one of the Japanese top league teams here in as I said, in Japan. We're based in Tokyo Bay. We're in a very nice spot, so yeah, great to be on the show.
Sorry, I'm now fascinated. So I'm just going to go down that route and ignore anything that Dave's going to say to you. I would love to know. So you're Scottish. How long have you been in Japan?
Nearly 5 years now already, which is very scary even to say. Yeah, about 4.5 years.
Wow. And you know that decision that you made to leave Scotland to go to Japan? They are not culturally the same. How did you process that?
Well, I've done a little bit of traveling between Debbie with my career, so we sort of gradually moved further and further away as it was as my journey took me. So we started off up in Edinburgh, moved down to the West Country in Gloucester, spent 3 years there, which were great years, and then we moved across into France in Clermont for 3 years as well, which I loved, and then we essentially opportunity came my way. I was pretty much all set to stay in France. This opportunity came on the radar when I was still a player. I was just still playing, so I thought rugby, it's a short career. We consulted obviously closely with my wife. We came out here with our two sons. We've now got three sons, and we're still here in Japan 5 years later, and we came for two, so we're still going.
I have got loads of questions, Dave. I am aware that this is a conversation you really do treasure, so I do not want to consume it.
I thought you were really subtle there, Greg. I want to give you kudos for how you educated my good lady as to all the travel you've done as an international superstar, right, David? That's the last time I referenced something like that. I think I'm interested about what role did leadership play for you in your career, and when did it become perhaps an important part of your game?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, I mean, I always I loved the game of rugby first and foremost, but the way I was made, put together, I was never the quickest guy, or the biggest. So I think very early on, I sort of realized that I need to find a point of difference if I'm going to be able to make it in the game. And I think the position I played, whether it be 9 predominantly or number 10, it automatically demands that side of the south side of the coin, as it were, in terms of that leadership stuff. And I really sort of took to that and enjoyed that part of it, really trying to help the team. Essentially, that's the 9 and 10's job, isn't it, is getting the teams in the right area of the field. That's sometimes through communication skills, that's sometimes through things you're actually doing on the field. So lots of different parts to it, but it's something I really enjoyed, that almost that connection part straight away from the very start.
And when you look at leadership during your time as a player, were there particular leadership models in the game that you found were better than others?
Definitely. It's interesting, isn't it? Like a lot of the time you learn on your journey, I think you learn more of what not to do sometimes. Yeah, and I think it's something I've always tried to keep, whether it's at the back of my mind or the front of my mind. I'm not quite sure, but it's in there somewhere. And I think the styles you like to follow, I think, are the very much the people who do, not just say. And especially in that rugby context, isn't it? It's like you want your captain or whoever that is to just lead by example. You know, and that's something that I'm really big on now. The team I'm coaching here currently, we've came out of the second division, and it's a part of the development of this team that I'm really trying to enjoy building again, and it's almost like going back to the start for me. So it's really exciting.
We talk about, and I'll be really intrigued to get your take on this, is we talk about, rather than having a model, we focus on principles so people can actually work out what that looks like for them. Because I think there is a lot in leadership out there that creates leadership through, you must do it this way, this is the only way. And one of our principles, and the main principle, is role model the behavior you want from others yourself first today. And in that context, knowing what that looks like on the field as well. And I've just been educated that the number 9 and number 10 are the people that get people in the right place. Thank you. I will remember that for future conversations with Dave. Go, oh yeah, I know what that position does. Is how do you role model that? So knowing that you've gone from being the player to now being this very instrumental part to a team, how do you role model it? What does it look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, as an example, and it's hopefully a good one, we had a guy who'd been given the captaincy here at this club. He's a younger player. He's got he's a good at rugby player. He's got potential, but you know, I could almost see that the captaincy just was affecting him. It just didn't sit well with him, you know. And then it didn't matter how much time, you know, I spent with him. I said, you know, try this, you know, try that. This is what I used to do. These are some other things that I've seen done in the past, but it just didn't sit with him, you know, well at all. And so what we ended up doing, and it was a difficult decision, we just took the captaincy off him. And it was so interesting for me because then, just by his nature, he started playing better. So the most important thing is he play well. But then he started leading just naturally because he wasn't thinking about it. And that was it's been a really interesting process for me to go through, like, you know, almost having been through the whole captaincy thing and almost felt that at times as well. And seeing him come out the other side and leading probably the best he's ever led.
Fantastic. And also an example of leadership that we see a lot in corporate world, where people will see somebody who's really good at the job and then they'll promote them and that person falls apart because they were good at their job. They don't necessarily have the skills or the competencies. And it's not even, what we then do is target the person, not the fact that we may have put them in a position of risk ultimately, and then they don't shine. Fascinating that it even happens on a rugby pitch.
Well, it does, doesn't it? And that is the word around that space. Like, I truly think that is fascinating, and something that I've seen done in the past here is people, not here, but I think people complain around if it's the coaches or whoever, people that are off the field. Oh, we've not got any leaders in the team, and you know, that's what the problem is with the team. And it's something I've looked at in the past before as well. Is that not part of our job to actually develop leaders so that we then give them the tools, because we can't take the field. And that's, you know, me sitting back now in the coaching box. Once you come to game day, my job's done and I can't impact the game really at all. So are we giving our people actually the tools to go and lead? Because that's what you need them to do come the weekend. And it's the same scenario you're talking about.
Yeah, fascinating.
You know, leadership in the game today, where would you put Japan's rugby scene versus, you know, the classic Northern Hemisphere?
I think, like, internationally, I think they're definitely getting better. Obviously, they've got a guy called Michael Leach for the rugby fans out there. You know, he's getting on a little bit now, but in terms of his age, but you know, with age obviously comes that experience, doesn't it? And you know, whether you might slow down in terms of your actual physical speed, you know, sometimes you're sharper in the brain, aren't you? And you see things a bit quicker and you're a little bit smarter. So I think, you know, they've got a really strong leader. I think, you know, where they maybe struggle is that collective leadership, like across the board. And I think, and this is one thing I've learned, you know, since I've been here, and that's one of the great things about traveling is, and around the Japanese culture and the way kids are taught, you know, here in Japan, there's I think senpai and kohai. I don't know if you're familiar with the terms, So the senpai is the traditional older person in the company, the boss, so to speak, and the kohai is the junior. And very much it's top down. Everything's taught down to the kohais. You know, the senpai is the boss. Whatever he says, that gets done, and nobody really questions it. And it's been really interesting again in that rugby context for me. And you know, when I first got here, I was a player still. You know, and I sort of the first couple of weeks in training was really into. I was thinking, crikey, we're not too bad. We're looking pretty good here in training. And now we got into the couple of games, you know, and everything sort of went out the window because the way they'd been taught was like literal. So it was like do this. And in a game like rugby, you know, I guess maybe sometimes like business as well, things change and change quickly. And that's probably where they sometimes struggle, is that ability to change quickly, and probably because the way they've been taught, and certainly the way they've been taught from a younger age, it's very much taught down.
In that context, I was waiting to see if Dave was going to ask you something. In that context, how do you deal with that? Because that is cultural, isn't it? And that is a massive challenge across business world and corporate world, is that they follow the leader, and the leader's not always right. You know, they may have experience. Yes, we respect them, but it doesn't necessarily, and particularly now, generationally, when we look at how the world's dramatically changing, how do you deal with that then?
Well, I think it's, and this is where, you know, I've probably really learned a lot this season. This is my first year as a head coach. It's sometimes stepping back really and really allowing others, you know, in that space to actually just allow them to lead, you know, themselves. Because if you crowd them out, if they've always been taught down to, essentially they're given the answer, aren't they? But you know, I don't want that. And I think, again, if you're trying to grow your people, and if you want genuine leadership, you know, when you're not there to help, you know, what's the only way you can really do that is by giving them the environment to grow themselves. And it's been great in terms of loads of conversations, because again, sometimes in Japanese culture, yes actually doesn't mean yes, that they understand, that they sort of nod out of politeness. And then it goes full circle. You sort of come back to it and said, well, you know, I thought we agreed on that. And they're like, oh yeah, but we're just sort of being polite. So it's great. So I think stepping back sometimes, allowing others to lead is such a great tool in that space.
So, you know, when you look across your career, including up to today, I want to ask you a question in a minute. I'll prepare the way first, right, Greg? So what are you still shit at? We'll ask that next, right? But when you look back at who inspired you, either at any point in your career, who inspired you the most? Now, one of the things that we say in our business is inspiration is where you have true inspiration and an action occurs. So who was it that had that most defining moment on who you were as a player, and that's still with you as a coach today?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, like, when I look at the coaches around the world, you know, in the rugby terms, and I look at people that have done well in business, I think, you know, they really get that space right, don't they? I think, you know, just to quickly reference somebody like Rassie Erasmus at the moment in South Africa, like, you know, you look at South Africa over the years, they've always had great players, haven't they? Great rugby players. You know, but why are they clicking now? And I think somebody like Rassie Erasmus there, I think he understands that side, and, you know, that ability to tap into that and really, you know, inspire players and the people to get the best out of them. That person for me was probably, I've been very fortunate over my career, you know, been opened up to great leaders, you know, within the military, leaders obviously within the rugby world. And one of them was probably Vern Cotter, Kiwi coach, back in New Zealand now, coached Scotland for a number of years. And like, you know, players, coaches, sometimes you see eye to eye more with certain coaches and others not so much. But Vern was very much the one I probably connected with in that space. And it's funny, I sort of get annoyed with myself sometimes when I think back to the time, because Vern's obviously a Kiwi, as I mentioned, but he almost like reminded me what it was to play for Scotland, which, you know, seems a bit strange, or might sound strange, but, when you're in professional sport, it's your job. You sometimes get lost, in that space, and you think about things too much and you overcomplicate things. And he really, for me, really stripped it back to, geez, Scotland are like a proud nation, like your history around, warriors and the national team. That's what we sort of want to look like, and he really inspired me to think, and that was definitely the most enjoyable time probably throughout my Scotland career.
Tremendous. I don't need selling on the spirit of Caledonia, right? As in, I think we should be bringing it into everything, right? Even how you eat your breakfast, right? It should be. Let's do it for Scotland. I like that because I think what you're telling me is sometimes routine can get in the way of our leadership. Routine can get in the way of our leadership experience and those who are working with us. And therefore, it's keeping that fluidity, isn't it? Where your original identity or your original mental space can thrive. That's a really good insight. And unless you'd said, I would never have known that about that era of Scottish rugby because you were there, right? So that's an inside track, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I was there, and I think, yeah, and that's probably where I really started to get opened up to that collective leadership as well. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was able to captain the team on a fair few occasions, but it's something that Vern, brought in as well was what was called the Thistle Group. So again, like connecting to the history of our country and using our emblem. And the Thistle Group were the leaders, and they were like the sort of bearers of the thistle, so it were, and really it was our job to bring the rest of the team along with us at times, as well as showing strong leadership when we needed it. But it was very much a group, it wasn't just me, and that's where I really started to learn. And probably ironically, talked about the Japanese player. Ironically for me, then that was probably the same. I was probably not playing my best rugby when Vern came in, but very much probably got to my best rugby in that time. And when I look back, is it because I was thinking less just about me being the captain, and I was able to share that leadership throughout the team.
That's tremendous.
It's really interesting. Yeah, because I think a lot of people do see it as like a silo. They see it as like this kind of one individual. And that terminology of collective leadership is actually, genuinely let's help each other. And by doing that, we've also got each other's backs, because I also do think there's this bit of ego that goes in leadership that says, well, I'm better than you, which could sit in some of the Japanese culture that you highlighted. But I actually don't think it's ego for them. It is genuinely age is respected. You're an elder. So, and I think it's defining what is it that's showing up in that moment. It's a cultural difference? Is it actually this person's an arse? Is it that this person's got an ego the size of a house and it's just about them? Or is it actually this is somebody who's working it out and just needs a collection of people around them to get it right? I love that. I really like that. I'm learning lots here, and this is great rugby. Look at me.
Yeah, well, it's great, isn't it? I think it's certainly in a rugby space again, and if you allow other people to lead at times, I think I don't know if it's like fear from leaders that I've got to be seen to be leading here, and sometimes they're almost scared to let other people into that space. And I think sometimes you'll be surprised. Somebody will come through and you'll think, oh crikey, I never thought they were going to be a leader, and then all of a sudden you let them have that stage, and they can really flourish and become the best version of themselves. And interesting actually. Ego is quickly I'll sort of Ego is the Enemy. It's probably one of my favorite books. I don't know if you guys have read it, but I love that book for anybody that's interested in books.
Yeah, I built a library in our house because I'm that obsessed with books. So yes, there is books in every single room in our house. Where Dave sat, the library's behind him. So, but yeah, and I do agree, it's a really, really good book. And there's so many amazing books that allow us to learn from as well. And highlighting that, what is another book that you've really enjoyed reading?
Oh, geez.
I know I should have asked you this.
Book.
Really?
Yeah. What's its name? Oh, I was reading it on my iPad as well. It'll come back to me.
Yeah, it'll come back to you as you're going.
We've talked about some of the biggest influence on you, and even to this day, who is it fair to say was the least influenceable on you?
You do not need to say names if not required. Maybe examples.
Oh, yeah. So it's a tough question. I think any coach that maybe you feel is potentially there just to get paid, possibly. You know, I've probably not had too many of them to be fair, but you always come across maybe one or two, you know, throughout your career, and I think you can you can tell, you know, I mean, really deep down once you get to the tough parts, are these guys or is this person actually in it, you know, for the right reasons? And I think you can see that sometimes through work ethic, through are you going through tough times? You know, what does their behavior look, you know, in that tough times, or are they just looking, you know, to end their month and, you know, to see out their contract and they'll just move on to the next task. And so anybody you don't feel it's probably 100% invested, because rugby's, you know, very tough, you know, at times, and I think it truly shows your character, and especially when the chips are down, you know, so to speak, and you really find out a lot about true leaders, probably more so in tough times than you do. And it's a bit cliched, but it's true, isn't it?
It really is true. We say that, you know, the real leaders show up when the shit hits the fan. Because those are the times when we've got to be at our calmest and we've got to be stopping and thinking and reflecting and going, okay, how do I help? And I think that's just back to your other point, which is really interesting, about ego is the enemy and actually how it shows up. And sometimes it's normally from a base of fear, you know, that because I think there is this, and it's got lost a lot. And this is what we're experiencing when we say to people leadership or leaders shit. The first reaction is, well, it's not me, but I can tell you a story about somebody else. And it's like, we don't want to admit to ourselves that we do mess up on a regular basis. And actually it shows up in everybody. But we also have this fear of somebody being better than us. And I'm always fascinated when we're working with somebody who that is their driver of, well, what if they're better than me? You know, what if they do a better job than me? What if they do? That's freaking awesome. But I don't know if you experienced that on the pitch or even yourself then when you were playing. Did you ever, and if you did, how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think, I think I've always seen it as a real, you know, learning point. You know, if somebody's genuinely better than you, and I think again that really ties into that ego, doesn't it? It's like, well, you got to park it very quickly, otherwise you're gonna be pretty embarrassed pretty quickly. So I think it's a huge part of allowing yourself to become a better leader. You know, at times by saying, "Oh, crikey, I can see, you know, this player or he or she's much better in that space than me. I'm just going to really step back here and almost, you know, just watch at times." And because I truly believe, you know, all, you know, leaders, the best ones truly probably get that, don't they?
Yeah.
Whether that's, and as I mentioned before, you know, I've been very lucky to spend time with, you know, military leaders throughout the years, and people like that, and they're, you know, very much, you know, along their lines, you know, speak up, you know, make sure you're heard, because, you know, everybody's an equal in the team.
I love that. And you've made me want to go down a tangent today, Greg, around, and I haven't told Debbie about this, but I've decided I'm going to share with you a new acronym that I thought up yesterday, but I'm going to use the acronym to anyone listening can learn it. I'm going to link it to why we're doing this season of the actual podcast, and then I'm going to ask you to answer the acronym live around your thoughts around the bits around it. So
No pressure here, no pressure whatsoever.
So it is straightforward, I promise. So we're on a mission as a business at And to do two things in a nutshell. One is to help people find meaning in their lives. That's what And is about, where we ask the question, what's your And? But from a leadership perspective, we're on this mission to go against this global deficit where leadership is turning to shite, right? Whether it's in business, politics, communities, countries, we don't need to, you know, highlight more than the world already does for itself. But you impact that one person at a time, right? When one person decides, I'm going to build something to overcome that, I'm going to help the next person, that's the only way to go against it, right? So I was realizing that building leadership using the BUILD acronym is an easy idea, and it stands for this. B is beliefs. What do you believe in? U is unify. What are you uniting? I is about inspiration. L is about leading, and doing is, as you've already highlighted, I think, enough, and it's your message. It's about doing it, right? So I'm going to ask you each of those letters again, Greg, right? And I'm going to ask you about it from you choose the context, but I'd love to know, either in the game or as a man, what with leadership, what do you fundamentally believe? That actually, if your team that you're coaching heard this, they'd go, yeah, that's great.
Is it about like me personally, or just in terms of
Yeah.
leadership, you mean?
Both.
Either.
Yeah.
You are the same.
Yeah. So belief. What do I like? I believe hard work is, if I truly believe, if you put enough hard work in, and enough, we talk about smarts in the rugby world, smarts, skill sets. Yeah, I truly believe that you can achieve pretty much what you want to achieve. What you put your mind to. Do you genuinely believe that yourself? Do we genuinely believe that as a collective? So I guess you can use it both ways. For myself, as a collective, our team here in Japan, do we believe, and it'll take us 3-4 years, but do we believe we can get the number one in Japan? That's essentially the goal, isn't it? That's why we're all here. But do we have genuine belief, across the board?
Which is interesting, because that goes back to your example of, and we know this for true from the facts that of coaching people, is that when they don't believe and they are attempting to convince themselves, it becomes shit, because it actually ripples out across everybody else. Because if they don't believe you, they're not going to believe it themselves. And yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, because you got to. It's like the old story. Are you hoping, that you win? Do you just hope and think, oh, geez, look, I hope we win today, or do you genuinely believe, man to man, woman to woman, whatever your team is, are you going to go out there? Are we got that collective belief that we're going to go and win? And that again becomes, powerful, that collective thought.
I always think belief is a physical thing as well. And I don't think people talk about that enough, that you can physically feel it. When you believe something, it's like it's the best way. I'm really stubborn. Clearly, it's just. But my stubbornness for me is a big part of my belief, is because I believe I can, right? Whatever's thrown at me, life throws its curveballs, but belief means that I can physically feel it. And when I don't, I'm not very good. I'm not very good. I'm disinterested. I'm disengaged. I don't listen properly. So I love that. I think that's really important.
And for anyone listening, that's a disclaimer, Debbie. Could you just make sure you sign afterwards? That's right. And would that be the thing that you're also unifying? This sense of knowing in your current remit? Would that be the same thing?
Yeah, it definitely comes under the same umbrella, doesn't it? And I think, unifying, but this is where I believe, like, probably belonging, really sort of comes into it as well. Does every athlete coming into your environment, do they feel, like they belong in this environment? So, then that unity becomes easier, off the back of that, doesn't it? And I don't know if you're familiar with a guy called Owen Eastwood. Owen's actually, he's another Kiwi actually, but he's worked with like South African cricket, English football, and around team culture and the sense of belonging. And it's so important if you get as many people, feeling as though they belong in that environment, that they're comfortable to challenge, they've got safe space to challenge, and then that unity, belonging really starts to come to life.
But so you've talked about this mission to become the best team in Japan. How do you find inspiration today? What kind of things do you do?
Well, I'm a father of three young boys. So firstly, I try and inspire them. You know, day to day, I try and do the right thing by them. Try and show them the way, as it were. So I think that's important, as well. And as I'm very passionate about my rugby, and sometimes maybe too much, and I don't forget about the family. But I think it's important first and foremost. You're setting an example for your children, and I think the other part of that is very much in around my work. And what inspires me is I want to be one of the best coaches in the world eventually. I've got a long way to go, but it's not going to be through lack of effort, lack of hard work. And I've been very fortunate. I've been asked to do this role at only 39 years old. So I'm one of the youngest coaches in the league. I probably didn't expect it to come as quick as this, but it has, and I'm just taking that opportunity with both hands and really going with it.
That's magic. I think that's a great story, isn't it? I think anyone listening is age isn't a limit, only your mind is.
It's true, and I think everybody probably suffers a little bit with imposter syndrome, over the years, and even I've had a lot of experience in the rugby world, but it's not the same as being the head coach. Having only coached for a couple of years, and I'm thinking sometimes, oh crikey, am I doing the right thing here? And oh geez, am I qualified for this? But yeah, sometimes you just got to back yourself, haven't you? And that comes back to that self-confidence, who you are as a person, and truly believing in yourself, which is critical as well. It's not being, cocky around like that, but self-belief is a massive part of being a leader. Sorry.
Great. And then the letter L, of course, is the word lead in the word build. What do you think is going to be an important part of leading for you in the future?
Well, I think the easy answer to that is obviously doing, but it's funny because as a coach, you don't really do you? Anymore. So I think as am I allowing people to become their own leaders? In essence, am I building a rugby program where I'm allowing that individual to really get the best out of themselves, or as many individuals within the program, as possible? Am I challenging the props? The same. I'm challenging the 15s. Obviously, very diverse in terms of the jobs they do on the field, but am I setting an environment where I'm really challenging the players to be better every day, to come into work and really enjoy it? And I think that's the way I would really like to lead, and is probably that two-pronged attack is firstly the environment, and secondly working alongside players to allow them to, or stepping back at times to allow other people to lead within the environment.
So the final word is do, but we'll come back to that in a second. So I'd like to go back to a question from a little while ago in this episode where I asked such an eloquent question, which is, what are you still shit at? So what are you working on yourself to get better at?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think sometimes you don't hide from it, but it's a question you maybe don't want to ask yourself, is it? And I think probably where I'm probably still shit at sometimes is very much, I'm quite emotive sometimes. Yeah, and do I let that get in the way, of my coaching? I certainly did sometimes as a player, and it doesn't help you. You think, oh, geez, I'm playing for Scotland, and I've got to be real emotive, and that's what this is all about. But it really isn't. It's about controlling that emotion, using it at the right times, because you need it sometimes. We talk about in the rugby world, the blue heads and the red heads. What state are you in? Are you in a blue head state where you're calm and clear and making strong decisions, or are you in that red head state where you potentially, your eyes are glazing over, you're making poor decisions, giving penalties away and making errors? So probably that emotive state is one that I have a relationship with, shall we say, that it's on a sliding scale when I need to use it, and certainly trying to control it.
I think that the emotional element of when we're dealing with that is, I do think it comes with age as well, is that I think if we all sat back in our 20s and we were all really cool, calm and collected and actually more pondered, we wouldn't be who we are today. So I do think it is a development that we've got to learn through experiences, else it doesn't land, does it? You know, it's just, it becomes a nice story of somebody else's. But I think that's the bit where is we've got to experience something and it's got to affect us for us to be able to understand how we're even going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, indeed, very well put. The Culture Code was that book I'm reading. Sorry, just while I remember.
No, thank you very much.
And just for anyone listening, Greg,
as we go quickly.
Greg did say that it would come back, didn't he, Debbie?
Pardon?
Greg did say it'd come back to him, so he's delivered against his promise. So that's a good sign of the coaching world, right, Greg?
Yeah, hopefully.
So I think the conversation today so far has been so rich, where we've looked at leadership in rugby and coaching. We've also looked at the differences in culture you've experienced. Before we start to bring our episode together, you played in France. France, I haven't seen the French rugby world, but what I read about it is it's different, it's more intense, it's more community, there's more money. Yes or no? How would you contrast that French part of your career? I know we moved on to Japan versus your British part of the career. What was that like? Because that's a huge change, isn't it? Leaving Britain and playing in France as a first move.
Yeah, France. Yeah, you talk about it's very ironic, I guess, that we're just talking about emotion and controlling it. The French are very, very driven on that emotion, on that emotive side of the game. That was probably something I really got my eyes open to, in a, for example, back home in Scotland or England, a lot of times by the time Monday morning, rolls around and you're going into meetings, a lot of that emotion's been taken away, but just not in France. At times it's very much, Monday morning, sort of eyes popping out their head stuff and real emotive. And, the game's not till Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. So you've got a sort of long week to really keep that going. But real primal, like real in terms of people looking after the territories in France, that combative side, the close proximity of some of the teams to you. We were in the Massif Central, right in the middle of France. So you had Clermont v Lyon, Clermont v Brive, close derby games. As you mentioned, we were very fortunate. Probably one of the best stadiums, Stade Marcel Michelin, for any rugby supporters. Get yourself down there for a trip at some point. It's magnificent. About 20,000 Clermont supporters. Half the town comes along to watch the game. The French band's playing. Proper great rugby match and a magnificent setting to go and play your rugby.
It sounds amazing. We used to live in Mallorca, and we would drive around that part of the world on the way to Barca, and you could see how even just on the territory of the land, the geography, the just how it all changes shape and how they all come together. We also spent some time, I can't remember where we were, in Toulouse, waiting for a ferry, and watching. It must have been at a time when there was a game on. We were taking the long ferry back from Toulouse back to Mallorca, and the town just seemed like it was ready for a carnival.
Yeah, it's truly like it's probably the best rugby experience. Certainly, club wise, England's getting better and better, but the crowds and stuff you get in France, the way the town gets behind you, and any home game for Clermont, for us, we'd meet up about, I think it was 5 hours or something before the home game. You'd go meet at the stadium, sort of connect as a team, and then we'd walk over just to a little local hotel that used to look after us. We'd have sort of beds and that on for boys that would like asleep before the game. But then, once you came out of that hotel, the public were there, 1.5 hours before kickoff, creating a tunnel, clapping the team in. And this for every single home game, of the season. And it really demands performance. out of you as a player. You're thinking, you crikey, you know, the whole town are out here. We're going to have to perform tonight. And yeah, we never lost many games at home. You know, put it that way. I was there for 3 seasons, and I think we only lost a couple of games at home. So it's very like attritional, but the real proud people, and you know, proud of that town, and they really sort of play on that, which makes away games pretty tough as well.
Yeah, but that goes back to that collective thing, isn't it? About belief. When somebody else believes in you, you actually do start to believe in it yourself too. I think it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah,
I love-
truly, and you know, again, if you get the whole town behind you, and that's what's great about really testing yourself in France, is going away to away stadiums now, whether it's, you know, Bordeaux, you know, Racing Metro, you know, you get big crowds, yeah, and so it's a real test, not only of your rugby, but of that mental side as well, which, you know, sort of connects in a little bit to that leadership stuff.
And staying blue, isn't it? And not blowing up red.
Staying blue, it's so key in a game that's confrontational, physical. Like, can you push it all the way to the edge, but stay on the right side? Can you be just physical enough without tipping into the red? And it's a huge part of the game now, and the best players in the world are able to, you know, walk that tightrope of finding that fine line.
So I have to ask you, I've got you this, I don't know when this will go out, but it's pre-Lions tour, right? So there's a lot of talk currently of the Lions squad. Will Finn start at number 10? What do you think?
Oh, I think he has to at this moment in time. I think not only because of the way he's played for Scotland, but the way he's like really rejuvenated Bath. You know, and I think Andy Farrell will see that. I think the way he's really matured, I guess, throughout the years. You know, Finn, you know, ironically, that's the thing we all love about him as well, is his cheeky side. You know, and he really helped me because I'm a bit of a quieter, more introverted character than he is. But yeah, I'm going to say he's going to start. You know, touch wood, he's going to be fit and healthy. He's still got a couple, obviously a Premiership final to get through now, but I'm sure he'll come through that with flying colours. And I think he's really earned it. I believe. I think as I said, the way he's matured, the way he's really driving the team now, and he gets that balance right with his attacking kicks to, you know, his kicks that, you know, putting the team in the right position. I think he's really leading any team he plays in now.
Do you think the Australia tour is going to be what the Lions hope it will be? You know, I watch it from the side and go, you hope Australia, who were 2 years ago up on their knees, right? I think they have made a resurgence. I think they're in a massive rebuild period due to money gain, commercials. Do you think it'll be tough for the Lions, or do you think, as a coach, it's going to be harder to meet what we expect them to do versus going there in the past would have been difficult to win?
I think Australia have probably just got themselves together in time. Yeah, it's what I believe, and I hope that's the case. You know, everybody in the rugby world, it's such a unique thing. The Lions, you want it to be that tight, you know, difficult, edgy test matches. I think with Joe Schmidt going in there, you know, maybe whatever it was a couple of years ago now, maybe a year and a half ago, I think he's probably just had enough time. Some of the Aussie teams are playing better in Super Rugby as well. I think probably a position they'll be worried about is probably in that number 10 slot, ironically, you know, talking about Finn. The Aussies, just quickly touching a name, are probably looking for potentially Tom Linder to come through, and but they're probably looking for a number 10 to really step up and help lead that team. But hopefully they're just ready in time.
Yes. So I'm going to give you a chance, Greg, to ask us a question before we start wrapping up this episode. We've been looking at leadership and leadership with the fabulous Greig Laidlaw. Is there anything you'd like to ask us? We've been leadership coaches for 20 years. This is your chance to ask us anything you like.
Oh, there you go. So I guess you probably 20 years, a long time, so you've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of people. Is probably what's the traits or the behaviors of one of the best leaders you've come across? And second part of that, What do you think around body language as well when you're leadership, when you're in that leader position?
Great questions.
Very good questions. Debbie.
Mine is simple, so I'll go first. So don't be a dick, be human and be kind, respect others, and provide yourself a circle of difference, not homogeny. And I think as a leader, you'll learn from different perspective. And I think it's not what anybody else says it is. It's not intelligent. It's not a framework. It's not a model. It's actually being who you can be at your best and role model it to help other people. That's what I see a leader as.
That's good, Debbie. I'm actually thinking about all the people I have met, and the breadth of it's insane, right? So you start to see it all. But I think one of my funniest and favorite, maddest ones was when I met Richard Frost, who used to run a paint engineering firm. He was part of the project that stopped the need to keep repainting the Forth Road Bridge. And he said something, and he said this sentence, right? Now, I'm sure you'll have heard of the book Good to Great, Jim Collins, and some of his great works, Built to Last, and so on and so on. But he said this phrase, and I apologize to any listeners. This is what Richard said. I'm one of the fucking idiots who read his books and put it into my business, and it worked. And I think, how many lessons are there in that single sentence, right? This is an engineer running a big, massive company, and he was the CEO, and he had the courage to say, I'm going to put this into my business, and I'm going to do it fully, properly, and all in. And I think that's my single trait I'd like to get to, is when you decide, like you said, Greg, that you believe in something, you go all in. You can't be nearly all in. It's, I'm going to put and rugby is aggressive. You put your body on the line or you don't, right? And if you don't, they score, right? It's usually what happens depending where you are on the pitch. So I think that would be mine. You had a second question. What was the second question?
Body language.
Body language of leaders.
I think there's two things. Body language is misunderstood. It's taught from the 70s. Virginia Satir, who wrote about all the different gestures, was about bringing dysfunctional families back together. I actually think the skill today is to teach people not to pay attention to what they're seeing and to focus on something you said earlier and notice more about what they're doing, right? Because
do their words match their actions? I think that's the biggest thing. Because Dave, on a humorous context, Dave's got a really grumpy face, right? And he looks like, that's what. So when the children were growing up, our children
up, Greg, right?
Yeah, so we call them kidults, but and our youngest is 23, our eldest is 34. So they're adults now. But when they were teenagers, they were so angry at him. And he might be sat there chilling, watching the telly, but he would have this big frown on his face. And that's the best example we can give you of body language is what we think is our emotion projecting on somebody else. And then we assume that's how the other person feel. And I think that's this paradigm of we're using really old models in a society that doesn't react like that. And also you've got 3 young boys. They don't interact the same either. So they're not, what they see as body language is not how we were brought up in that way, in the context of, well, look, they've got closed body language. They probably just go, no, I bet they're just comfy. It is a very different take of, and I think we've just put so much brevity into, oh, that person thinks this about me. And then we make a whole story up about somebody's body language and the other person's sat there going,
and Debs, there's 2 really important things here, right? So in the world of football, Bruno Fernandes gets obliterated by the media every week about how he behaves on the pitch because the pundits and the media make a thing of it, right? But nobody can debate his statistics. His statistics and data tell you he's done more than anyone else last season in the Premier League, right? So the press says that's rubbish. The data says, no, it isn't, right? And I think there lies your opportunity gap. So should he be less emotional in his gesturing? Maybe. Or should we all learn to say his name properly? Fernand, right? It's fine line, right? But Greg, I get the question, and I think the moment I'm worried about what your body language says, I'm no longer in the moment. That's the risk. And in the field of play, all of a sudden, if I'm thinking about that, I'm no longer in the game. So there's a fine line. So I would encourage you to explore it from particularly with players and coaching and communication, is to see what they do, which is what you said earlier. Not no, it's because that's where the evidence is. If what I think you're displaying is matched by your words, I pay attention. If it isn't, I don't give a shit about it.
Indeed.
So we have been talking to Greig Laidlaw. First of all, Greg, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very
My
much.
pleasure, guys.
This has been a really fun conversation. We have explored his career, his journey, the great things he's done, the fact he was part of the Thistle group in the Scotland Cauldron all those years ago, and how even playing for your country, even in a moment like that, as great as that, you have to remember the energy and the history behind it. He shared his love for the game. He shared his insights about what he thinks differently about the game to what others do, and his ambition to become one of the best coaches in the world of rugby in the years ahead of him. And at 39, I think you've got a pretty good shot at that, Greg.
Well, it's very kind of here's hoping it's not going to be through lack of trying anyway. And it's been a pleasure to chat to you guys tonight.
So
And
much, you too.
And this has been an episode of Calling In, Calling Out, the new version of And Double D in the Past, season number 7, Debbie. That's right, isn't it?
Yes.
Every success with your learning.